Busy Phillips reveals her 12-year-old child, Birdie, is gay, prefers they/them pronouns. I got to tell you, when the group sent this in, I'm going to just say right out, this wasn't my article that I put out there, but I was very happy that the person did. And let's read a little bit of it.
Okay.
Busy Phillips is opening up about her eldest child, Birdie, Birdie's journey regarding their sexuality and identity. The 41-year-old actress revealed Birdie, now 12, came out as gay when she was 10. On Thursday's episode of her Busy Phillips is Doing Her Best podcast, Phillips also shared that Birdie prefers they/them pronouns. And I won't talk about too much of it, but there's a couple things that I want to mention also in this article that I found interesting, is that she asked her 12-year-old daughter if she could bring it up on her own podcast and make it very public. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Why? Why'd you think it was interesting?
The thing for me is that even in my adult life, how many times my thoughts have changed on things, my perspective, there's been different evidence on something or whatever in months or years. When you come out so publicly like this at 12 years old, I think of my own kids, they're all adults now, and I think of them, and as they've decided and changed as kids and what they wanted to do in their life and all that kind of stuff. This is a lot of pressure to be this public.
Right.
And that was concerning to me as a parent, right? I guess so.
It was to me too. Honestly, I thought she was very young to be making that type of pressure. That's how she's got to be because she publicly announced it or whatever. But I also truly feel we know who we are inside, and kids are younger and younger and experimenting with things. And I truly believe at the age of 10, if she's stuck with it for 2 years and she truly feels that way, that's probably who she's going to be. And there's nothing wrong with that either way. You know what I mean? She can still change. There's plenty of things. But I feel like if she's been that way for 2 years, she truly has a good feeling. It wasn't like she decided, this week, I'm going to be this way.
Yeah.
But as a parent, I agree. My kid can't decide what he wants to do in college, and he's 21. Yet alone, she's 10 or 12 and deciding this is the lifestyle she's choosing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I see both sides of it totally.
Right. And I find it interesting that, from my understanding, is that at 10 years of age, Birdie went to the parents and said, "Hey, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm experiencing." And from my understanding, Busy said, "I knew then that Birdie knew how they were feeling," and it sounds like they. For a few years, there might have been just a couple years of just keeping it private and just trying to absorb it and, understand it and communicate about it. And then at 12 years of age, decided to make it public. And from my understanding, Birdie's quite supportive of it. She was quite supportive of, hey, let people know this is who I am and this is how I feel. And I definitely agree. And one of the things I find interesting about it is that we, again, going with Matt and Lisa, we as adults have a hard enough time deciding what we want to have for lunch. Making some big decisions like that. And it changed quite often. And we're discovering ourselves. But I think really at the end of the day, what is important and to note is they're communicating about it and they're accepting of it, and they're not shaming. There's no shaming, there's no guilt, there's no conditioning of like, this is who you are and this is who you should be. So I like the idea of acceptance very much.
A great shout out to the parents. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that you said for sure. But I guess I wouldn't want that kind of public pressure. I mean, we see it all the time in actors and actresses when they're kids and they get that kind of fame and they get that kind of pressure and they just can't handle it, right? And so those are some of the things that popped into my head. I think of all these Shia LaBeouf, or however you pronounce his name. Sorry, Shia, but
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce your last
Shia
name.
LaBeouf.
LaBeouf?
There we go.
All right,
Yeah.
LaBeouf, thank you. But, look at where he's at right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's in a lot of trouble. He's
Yeah.
super violent, and he was kind of put into that place and pressure of that publicity. And so those are some of the things that just are tangled up in my head about it. And
Yeah.
that was kind of why I was like, wow, that's public. It's so much pressure.
Yeah, a lot of pressure. And sometimes I wonder, is there added pressure because the mother is famous, a celebrity, right? So there you go with that. That's something that I believe that they're all going to just have to work through, and names may change, titles and labels may change, but I can only assume that they are they're aware of that. They're expecting that. I think if you ever look at the communities, there are so many different names that are coming up, from non-binary, transsexual, transgender, genderqueer, asexual, you name it. There are so many names, and not only are we trying to understand it and be respectful of it, here they are experiencing it personally, trying to understand their own feelings and process it through, as well. And so I guess my hope is that we can all be sort of acceptive and just, kind of appreciate the process and give them privacy. It's weird to say that because they literally let it out for everybody to be known, but at the same time, they deserve privacy as well.
I think they deserve respect, and they chose not to make it private, so that's already gone.
Right.
But I think they definitely deserve respect, and for someone that's going to talk about that publicly, I think there's a lot of courage there.
There's so much
Whether you
courage
agree
and
with it or
bravery,
not.
and as of 12 years old, Birdie has quite the road for her. There I go again, wanting to say her, and but that Birdie has a path, and so she has to live up to that path now. And whether they both discussed it by being in the home, the whole family, like, okay, we're putting this out there. Now, others are going to be curious about it. They're going to want to continually hear about this information and what's going on. So I hope they're prepared for that.
So I want to say I didn't know who she was, and now kind of knowing and different things like that, I go back to news sells. Does talking about her daughter help her show, help her life?
Oh, there you go.
Because I bring up this because there's so much reality TV out there.
I did look that up, but it's
Did you?
too. I did. I
Okay.
don't. I'm gonna look again, but it's too early to tell if that
Right.
helped
But
any ratings.
is this
yeah,
like a-
I did look though. So
Is
that's
this a game changer or a new aha moment to keep, in the limelight?
Right.
And I'm not making light of everything, but again, let's be real. I mean, news news sells. Everybody trying to follow and keep track, and the talking moment and what's got the talking coverage
And what's
right now.
trending, what's the
Yeah.
end thing. And
Yeah.
let's just say that we hope, I hope, and my, speaking personally, that this is not a trend, because I would think from a mental health standpoint, it's not easy for somebody to come out and say they're this or say they're that, knowing that they're going to get, positive reactions, but as well, negative as well. So my hope is that it's not a trend and that it's being glamorized. I mean, there are individuals out there that are experiencing this every day, and whether it's repressed or they've been conditioned or they've just, the stigma of not being able to talk about it. My hope is that, the more we talk about it and the more people come out, that it just makes it easier to have these discussions, whether we agree or not.
And
I agree with that. Yeah, we have to have the discussions whether we agree or not. So
Right.
a question that I have, and it's not pulling up the current ratings here right now, but her ratings were down, I know. But I'm not saying that that's a reason they came out with this publicly.
No,
but,
not at all. But I'm just saying, it's just.
So I would have a question then. What should you be called? Like, what should are you a her?
You mean for myself personally? Yeah. I've just always known myself as being her, she. I never really even actually thought about being called something else.
And so then the question would be, how should, if I say someone appears to be a female and I say her, should you be offended by that if that's not how you...
I would hope not. I think all this is so new too, and we're all learning. So again, one of the things that I have found is that if you're ever unsure, just ask. If you're sitting, you're confronted with somebody and you're like, oh, you're questioning it. Should I be she, they, them? From my understanding, the individuals that are going through this, they would really appreciate if you would ask them. Say, it's, don't feel silly. Don't feel, it's not a stupid question.
Let me give you a different example, or
Okay.
a different thought process of this. Okay, so I'm in a school assembly, and I'm doing the assembly, and I call on the crowd, and I say he and she, right? And there's people in the crowd that are not, they don't use those. They use the they, them.
Okay.
Okay, should they be offended by that?
No.
I don't
so.
think
No.
they should, but there's a possibility that they might be. You know what I mean? Like how are we to predict how they're going to take something? Honestly, I would think that because again, I feel we're sort of talking about it now, it's becoming more that maybe when, a few years down the road, because more discussions like this are happening, I can get maybe some might slowly start to be offended because it's just known and it's out there. But I think this is still new. And should they be offended? I don't know. I mean, that's not for me to say if they should be offended. I just think, I hope we're all understanding and just like.
And when I read this, the thing that came to mind, that's happened to me. By
Okay.
the way. And I think everybody here knows what I talk about in schools. I don't think anybody should be offended by what I talk about in schools. I'm certainly not going down a path to offend people.
Right.
And so I say that because then I start thinking about the science, right? Like we have the science, it's a her and a him. And so I think that my name is Matthew. How do you know me?
There's Matt.
It's my nickname.
Hey, Matt.
I think on an individual
Yeah.
basis, I think that makes a lot of sense. But if I'm in a group and I call out the group as he and her,
Generalization.
Yeah.
and someone's offended by that, I just that's where I struggle, and that's what I see a lot of this kind of stuff is kind of happening. So then, do I go into a school and not say he and her?
No.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for them coming out and doing this and talking about that, as long as it's for the right reasons. But I think that I shouldn't ever be offended if someone called me Mateo or Maddie or
Right.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like
Or
that's-
Melody. I'm often Melody,
yeah,
because
sure.
of harmony, and I just
Harmony,
respond to it
melody,
after I'm
right,
just like,
right.
I'm not going to correct you.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
kind of and so I think on a one-to-one basis, if Bertie came to me and said, "Hey, I want to be called this," and then I don't do it, that's on me.
Right.
There you go.
That's
the
on
insult.
me. I'm
Absolutely.
an a-hole for that.
Very much
Absolutely.
so.
For sure.
Yep.
And so that's kind of my point, I
Yep.
guess,
Yep.
right?
And what I would just like to say to finish this off is even Busy Phillips and her husband Mark are learning as well with this. This is even new to them. This, even though it's been 2 years, she admitted that she's trying to use they and them better in sentences when she's talking about this. And so I love the fact that she's admitting I'm learning as we go along too. This is new for me. This is so in a way it makes me think. I like when they put it out there that like it's a process. We're going to do this together. And to me, that says, hey, that's supportive parents, and I like that.
Yeah.
It's
yeah,
a politeness or a kindness thing. If you know about it, be respectful and call somebody what they want to be called. It's just like intentionally pronouncing somebody's name wrong. Like
Right.
Yeah, right.
Correct. yeah.
I have a unique last name, and when I'm at the clinic and they mispronounce it, I correct them and we move forward.
Yeah.
And next time I'm in, they pronounce it the right way.
Yeah.
And that's a respect thing. But
Mm-hmm.
if they keep pronouncing it the wrong way, that's where I might get offended.
Right.
Right.
So
Then
it's a courtesy.
it's intent.
That's good. Chris.
It's
It's intent.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
What is the intent behind it?
Right.
And I think that's what gets lost so often is that the intent is not malicious that they said your name wrong. The intent was just they needed to call it, and whoops. I mean, I screwed up Shia LaBeouf.
Well, I think a lot of people do that too. I mean, he has
I
a
didn't mean
funny
it.
last name,
It's unique.
but
And
yeah.
I didn't mean it as an offensive
And I don't think
thing.
he's going to
I
be
just don't
offended
know him
because he's probably
personally.
used to that happening.
Right,
You
right.
know?
Those with last names.
If he's gonna be
are
offended
unique.
about anything.
Yeah. So
So-
that's the point. The
Yeah.
intent. I think
Yeah.
the intent is where it's so important to understand.